evening, everyone. We want to welcome you to one of our first series of community workshops dealing with our capital improvement plan. We're very excited that this is our first one. I want to give you just a little background as to why we are here. We have a newly elected mayor who is very vibrant and very in tune to what's happening in the community. And one of the things that she has taken on is to revitalize downtown and our major corridors, and looking at how we look today and how we can move forward, and to presenting the groundwork of a brand new downtown. This is one of the things that the mayor brought before the council, got the council's support, and we're just excited as staff and as a community that we have elected officials that are and have supported this campaign to revitalize downtown. There's a great opportunity that North Miami has. We are strategically located between two airports. We have connections with 441, I-95, US 1, and we have other major thoroughfares going through the city, both in a north-south direction and an east-west connection, connecting to other communities here on the northern end of the county. I was listening to someone today, and they said Midtown. Well, through the mayor and council's vision, we're going to create North Miami as Uptown. Uptown. This is the vibrant place that people are going to want to come. So getting started tonight, I want to first take the opportunity to introduce our newly elected mayor and council members that are sitting here with us tonight. First, I want to introduce Mayor Lucie Tondreau, Councilman Philip Bieneme, and Councilwoman Carol Keys. And as the other members of council, if they're able to attend, we will also recognize and introduce them tonight. My name is Stephen Johnson. I'm the city manager, and it's an opportunity to serve this community and this mayor and council. When the mayor came to us and had this passed at a council meeting, we as staff members right away started to put together an action plan. In fact, we've already taken one trip to Fort Myers. On tomorrow, we will be going to the city of Delray Beach to look at their downtown. We're looking at cities that have similar to us, comparable to us, and that have already done it. And we're trying to pick the best model so that we could rapidly get things done. We have a very good downtown action plan, and we have staff working that is a part of this task force. And I want to take the time to introduce them. Dr. Lemaine Claude is the chair, and also our deputy city manager. We have Mr. Aleem Ghani from the Public Works. Is he here? He's the Director of Public Works. We have Mr. Kareth Fittler, the Assistant Director, Natasha Colebrook, Governmental Affairs Manager, Tanya Wilson-Chajour, our Planning Manager. They're all here. Georgette Clairvaux, she's our Interim Economic Development Manager. Mr. Leslie Pradhan, our CRA Coordinator, and Camelia Sigrenor, our Finance Director. And where's Mr. John O'Brien? Is it John here? Okay, he's our Transportation Manager. This is just one of many task force. We have another task force that's also composed of some of these members. We're trying to find capital funding, find the money. That's very important. And we're also, we are simultaneously getting a rating for the city. The city currently does not have a rating, so we're now officially getting a rating. With that in mind, our objective is to get a rating, take those funds, come back and present the idea to the council. Some of these funds can be bonded out over a period of time, which is what's going to give us our clucks of funding. We're trying to get in the upward of $50 to $75 million, whether it's one lump sum, whether we take funds from a variety of sources that we are identifying and bond those out over a period of time without, and this is different from a tax bond where you get the taxpayers to pay, to bond out. This is different from that. We're looking at funding resources that we currently have, and we're trying to bond those out. I'll give you a prime example. In a few years from now, we'll be getting $1.5 million from our Biscayne Landing lease agreement. Instead of getting that money annually, as you know, $1.5 million can easily be absorbed into a budget. But if you bond that out over a 30, 40-year period, and that's the type of resources that we're looking at. So we do have a project manager for this, and I want to introduce our planning manager, Ms. Tanya Wilson-Sejour, and at this time she can take the opportunity to introduce our consultants and continue on with part one of our program, our Downtown Development and Major Corridor Master Plan. Tanya.
Good evening, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing our dynamic project team. I just want to recap that last year in May 2013, the city adopted a master plan, a downtown and major corridor master plan. And really what that plan served as was a self-assessment of North Miami's downtown and major corridors. For the purpose of tonight's meeting, we're going to hone in and focus on just the downtown portion of that master plan. We have a project team that's here. We're going to revisit the vision that was cast in that master plan. What it looked at in terms of the self-assessment was determining what North Miami's assets are. You know, for many years we've heard North Miami is a cultural community. We've heard it's an arts community. Well, we took the time in that master plan to really go through a fine-tuned assessment of North Miami. And what you'll hear from the project team tonight is really the strengths, the bragging rights that North Miami has in terms of what sets us apart from other cities. We're not trying to be like Orlando. We're not trying to be like Miami Shores. We recognize that we have strengths and we have assets that we can sell and capitalize on. So you'll hear from the project team tonight as we recapped and recast the vision of what was seen in that master plan. And then the next step, which is why you're here tonight, is after we've cast a vision and we've done a self-assessment, what's the next step? What's the action plan? What's the strategy? What's the prioritized order of how we will develop an implementation plan for making that actual vision come to reality? So I'm going to introduce the project team tonight. The first speaker that you're going to hear from is Miss Debbie Love, and she's a senior planner, an urban planner with Keefe and Schnars, and she'll do the overview of the master plan itself and take you through the opportunities and constraints that were outlined in that master plan and take a step forward and look at the recommendations that were made in that document for transforming the downtown. And then the second speaker you hear from is Bob Cambrick, and he's Director of Public Policy and Planning at the South Florida Regional Planning Council. An important part that he'll play is actually making it a public process and an interactive process. We recognize that no great plan rests on the arms of government alone. And except there's a partnership between private and public and a partnership between the government and people, the plan won't come to fruition. So Bob will help us to take you through the actual action plan and soliciting input from the public itself and making sure that as we go through the formation of the action plan, there's active public participation from the civic organizations, from the businesses, from the residents, so that when the final plan is created, it will feel like it's owned and it feel like it actually has input from North Miami, business and residents alike. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and that's Debbie Love, that's going to walk you through the vision of the downtown plan. And again, as I mentioned before, it's a self-assessment. What are our strengths, what are our opportunities and constraints, and what are the recommendations to take us from the vision to the reality of transforming our downtown and creating a dynamic space for North Miami. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Really do appreciate that lovely introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming on this nice, chilly evening. I think as we get along a little bit later in the evening, we'll all wish we had a lot more clothes on. As Tanya said, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm just going to kind of walk you through what happened in the master plan, what we saw through the self-assessment, and some of the recommendations that we came up with with assistance through the public, and you'll hear a little bit about that as well. One of the things with the master plan is that, as Tanya said, it was adopted in May 2013, and it is, as she mentioned, it is a self-assessment. It looks at a number of things. It also provides guidelines to implement the vision for the study area. Staff actually uses the design guidelines that are within the document to talk about and encourage the type of development and redevelopment the community desires. The city of North Miami's downtown is already defined in the future land use, and it is bordered by it includes the Central City District as well as the Neighborhood Redevelopment Overlay District. This is a map that identifies the corridors and the areas that we actually studied, and you can see they're all in different colors to highlight the areas that we studied, and you can see that it runs across the screen here. But tonight we're going to focus on the gold section that you see at the bottom of your screen. Again, this is another map that shows you the districts that the different areas that we studied and whose district these are in. And this particular map outlines the downtown area, as you can see where it runs to. It's outlined in the black area, and the little teal area is the core area of the downtown. Part of the self-assessment was for us to take a look at all the stuff that the city's already done. The city's done a lot of things. They've done a lot of studies. They've had a lot of visioning already done. So our job wasn't to recreate the wheel, but rather to bring all that in together into the document, acknowledge all the work that has already been done by the city and the staff. They've done a fabulous job of looking at the land development regulations, the comp plan. You have a lot of great studies that were done, so we wanted to then take those documents, incorporate it into ours. But one of the things that we had to do through that self-assessment was to look at what the demographics and the housing situation was within those study areas. What's the employment characteristics? Where do people work? Where do they go to? What are the land use and the zoning characteristics for the area? And in consultation with our subconsultant on the project, Bob Gray with Strategic Planning Group, he actually looked at the economic foundations of the city, what was really going on economically in the city, including a retail gap analysis that said what is missing, what kind of things, what kind of businesses would be are missing in a radius, and they call it 1, 3, and 5 mile radius. And another important piece that we did do was the economic and market analysis report, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the recommendations that came out of that. Looking at all those documents, there were several overarching themes that came out very clearly. One was to diversify and strengthen the retail mix that you have now, and encourage those, what they call in the game, P3, the public-private partnerships. That's very important. And invest in the public realm. And you can see that some of the cities that we've worked with have done investment in the public realm, either through art or through recreation. And we'll show you some photos as we go along of examples of downtown that has used art as well as other recreation. Another thing that came out of the study of what you've already done is to capitalize, as Tanya said, you have some very distinguishing assets here in the city. You're known as an educational and cultural community. You have Johnson & Wales, you have FIU, you have Barry University, you have a lot of education here. You also have a very strong cultural community. You have MoCA, you have a world-class museum right here. So one of the suggestions that came out of your existing stuff before we even got to the master plan was to bring Johnson & Wales into the downtown. And our economic analysis echoed that. It said that is going to be a really key piece, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the recommendations on that. Promote your film and television industry. Does anybody know that you have that here? A lot of people don't, that we were surprised how many people don't realize that you have that great asset to build upon here. And again, capitalize on MoCA. MoCA is a world-class museum. And strengthen your existing niche retail. You've got some interesting things going on here with the antiques and the art galleries. Again, your downtown has an arts and cultural overlay district, very similar to Miami, the Wynwood in Miami. You can do something like that in the downtown. Again, another recommendation that we echo in the master plan is to promote mixed use with the ground floor retail. And you can see that some of the pictures that we are showing are from communities we've either worked with or that the council has already visited, such as Fort Myers, that show this mixed use. Mixed use, of course, is generally housing over retail in the case here, although mixed use it could be office over retail. But in the case of North Miami, we recommend that it be housing over retail. And in the downtown, specifically student housing, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. Transit-oriented design was another idea that came out of your existing documents that we echo here as well. And that's higher density mixed use. Encouraging transit ridership, getting people to walk more. But you have to make it attractive through the encouragement of parks and plazas and planting trees, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. Another thing that came out was the promoting the livable and complete streets. DOT has a program they call the Transportation Livable Street Program, and it's a special designation that guides you specific to pedestrian-friendly uses, where bikes and people walk. It's more geared to people than it is to automobiles, and that's really what you want to see in your downtown. Okay, you do have some great programs already established that you should continue, and one is the business program, business assistance program. The CRA is doing that now. And we really encourage that because the pictures that you see here are examples of those that have utilized that business assistance program. And you can see the result. We did have 2 workshops in 2012, and they were located in the downtown, and I see some familiar faces here that did attend, and they did provide us some really great input, help do some actual design, some drawing and some design, and gave us some really great feedback that was very helpful in the development of the plan. During that process, we conducted stakeholder surveys, and they were specific to every corridor. Now, you can see that this is just an example of one of the surveys, and this particular one was for 441 that I show up here. And they were all different. Every corridor was a little different in what people saw as their needs, their wants, their desires, and their architectural treatments that they wanted to use. But there were some common things that came out of this, like shade trees and more landscaping and make it more pedestrian friendly and improve the safety for the pedestrian and crossing, make them more attractive as well. How about some decorative street lighting and take a look at the streetscape and let's make it beautiful. Let's make the streets beautiful. More public plaza areas where people can gather and do things. And I'm going to talk to you about one great opportunity that we see right away on that. Slow traffic down. Do some traffic calming in these streets. The thing that came out of the downtown area specifically is that it's a very unique character that they want to preserve. They want to create a sense of place in the downtown and make it mixed use. That came out strongly in the stakeholder and reviews. So looking at all of those things, we then took all of that information, all the things that we gathered from staff and from the community, and started looking at the opportunities and constraints. This is part of that self-assessment. We looked at everything from the right-of-way widths to the existing tree canopy to the architecture that was there existing. And then we also, out of those same constraints or the same existing conditions, we looked at what are the opportunities related to these things. And you can see that there's a couple of streets. We're going to show you a couple of examples that we came up with. The existing condition here on 6th Avenue, which is the reason that 6 is here, is because it's part of the downtown. We recommend that this is a great opportunity and location to put a gateway feature. And some of the pictures that we got from the council members' visit to Fort Myers was an example there of a gateway feature that they have that you'll see here in a bit. And different communities have different types of gateways, and their style and their design is all unique to that particular area. Another example on 6th Avenue, and some of these things can go elsewhere like the sidewalks, but in 6th Avenue this is really key on 6th Avenue. You have very narrow sidewalks in many locations, so you really can't get that beautiful grand walkway and be able to put cafes or anything there along those. That's really challenging. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about coordination with DOT in regard to the right-of-way widths. So the opportunity here is to put some really nice sidewalks in, to make them wider, to make them multi-use paths, to decorate them, and you'll see some of the examples in some of the other communities here shortly of how how it comes out. On West Dixie, remember I said to you there's a really great opportunity for some public space, and this is on West Dixie. You have 3 triangular parcels on West Dixie, and these would be great locations for public space. You could see that we've had these pictures here of how other communities have actually utilized these public spaces, and it put parks or made it a great gathering place for a farmer's market, just some type of public space. On 125th, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Yes, ma'am. Go back to the next picture. Yes, ma'am.
Downstairs. Where is it? That picture.
Which one, ma'am?
The clock, where the clock is.
Here.
Huh?
Right here.
Where?
No, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me. This is actually I do apologize. This is actually in Miami. In Miami. Oh my goodness, what an interesting ringer you have. So they have utilized these little triangular parcels in ways that we think can be echoed here for public space. Ready? Okay. I spoke to you earlier briefly about the FEC transit station. This is something that's coming to reality, and I'll show you why. They've actually designed the area, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in detail. This is a opportunity for a transit station to be located on 125th and to make the entire area transit-oriented development. As I mentioned to you earlier what transit-oriented development was all about, this is where this is going to be a major, major opportunity and driver for the redevelopment of the downtown area, as well as a boon to the entire city. It's been on hold for a while, but it is actually moving forward. It is coming back. Yes, ma'am. Another opportunity for 125th is to green the streets. This was another thing that we heard. Add more landscaping. There are studies that actually have been conducted that said that people are more attracted to come in and recreate and play, as well as buy and retail, places that have trees, that have nice shade trees. They've actually documented that people are willing to pay 9 to 12% more for services and goods in areas that have shade trees. Very interesting. So the ability to add trees, and this is one of the things we're going to talk to you about. One of the constraints is the right-of-way issue, and you'll have to coordinate with DOT, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But it is imperative to make it pedestrian-friendly. You can't have people out walking the streets without the shade. They're just not going to do it. And you can have shade structures, but it's not the same as the green streets. Some key recommendations that we have that we want to share with you tonight that is in the master plan. We're just going to touch on a few of them tonight. We're not going to delve into it in too deep because we do have a lot of things to talk about. Is right now in West Dixie and downtown Northeast 125th, on the economic side, we looked at them together because they're kind of a pair. There's a potential for a limited amount of locally derived retail, particularly on West Dixie Highway. But with MoCA, you can actually increase the regional draw and bring more people into the downtown area. You should allow particularly on West Dixie, allow some light industrial distribution, because you want to move what's over on 125th, and you want to be careful about what's happening near that transit station and make sure that you're not putting move what's industrial there over elsewhere over onto West Dixie, for example. That's one of the recommendations that the plan said. You want to continue to do the program that you have with the facades, because you're not going to have everybody redevelop right away. But you do want them to beautify their buildings, and you can help them by increasing that and encouraging that facade improvement program. Another thing that we recommend that you do strongly is what Naples ended up doing. Increase the height and the density and identify the parking. Right now you have a perceived problem of parking in the downtown. And one of the ideas is parking structures. The master plan addressed parking structures and said, you know, parking structure doesn't have to be ugly. One of the architects that showed up at the meeting, I'm not going to embarrass him by calling him out, but his suggestion was that you can actually green, and we've done green where you have plants on the outside of your parking structure. It looks very, very nice. You can actually make it fit in architecturally so it's not an eyesore like many parking structures are. Very important. This is another one of your really unique opportunities, is to capture the student market by bringing in student housing into the downtown, putting retail-oriented stores and entertainment, things that will bring the students and entertain the students so they're there. You want to have the eyes on the street 24/7, and the only way you can do that is through housing. Establish a culinary incubator space. Work with Johnson & Wales. This is another very key recommendation, is to bring those incubator spaces. Oakland Park has now established a culinary district. You too, you have Johnson & Wales. They don't have Johnson & Wales. You have this great opportunity. And FIU's program, that's right, yes ma'am. You have the Arts and Cultural Overlay District. This is incredible. You have so many things in place already. It's just now let's move it and do it. You have food and drinking and clothing, miscellaneous retail. We want those kind of things along 125th and West Dixie, is to encourage food, drinking, clothing, and miscellaneous retail. We looked at the streetscape. One of the things we heard very clearly is that the streets need to be landscaped. They need to be treated. So we have hardscape as well as landscaping treatments. On 125th, and I'm going to go to my notes here because I think it's important that I call out these things that I want you to see, and I do apologize. On 125th, this is a location, excellent location in the downtown for that gateway treatment. We have an example of a gateway treatment, but you don't want to get tied up on that design, but this is a perfect location to have a gateway treatment. You want the buildings to be up to the back of the sidewalk. One of the very interesting things is that here in this particular corridor, this is a really great opportunity to have joint signage between the city and the businesses. Right now, you don't allow signage within a certain distance of the curb. You want to change that. You want to allow those signages to be close to there so that they can be a joint, it's called a joint signage agreement between the city and the businesses. We think that's very important. This is a great place, as I said, for the gateway treatment. We have curb extensions. We have to look at that existing on-street parking. This is both by adding the on-street parking, that's a traffic calming. So that's another way of slowing down the traffic. We heard that from the public. And because what this curbed on-street parking does, another important part, is that there's a picture that I wish I could show you here. There was a gentleman standing in the middle of the street trying to cross. It's extremely dangerous trying to cross. So one of the things that this does by having the on-street parking is it shortens the crossing distance. So they have less distance to have to traverse across traffic. We also recommend that you have some sidewalk treatments that you're already using. We want you to consider extending that throughout the city for consistency purposes. West Dixie Highway, another great opportunity. Again, this is in the downtown area. This is where we recommend that you, as you can see in the kind of middle bottom, that triangular park. We're recommending that you create that triangular park there. And again, raising the median so that you can put trees there. It also sort of becomes a refuge island for pedestrians who are crossing. The buildings are set to what we're calling a build-to line. It's 10 feet back from the back of the sidewalk. The area between the sidewalk and the building is all hardscape treatment so that you can set, it could be a cafe out there, and you saw that in Fort Myers when you all went. There was a lot of that, and they had the same build-to line where it's closer to the road. Awnings or colonnades with hanging signage under the businesses, that's a recommendation here. And canopy trees, again, to cool the area and provide shade for the pedestrians and encourage, in addition to all of that, having street furniture, having benches and parks and, benches and trash cans and things like that, where people are going to stay and visit with you. And decorative street lighting and as well as human-scaled pedestrian lighting. On 6th Avenue, again, this is in here because it is in the downtown. This is more of a residential corridor. And it is proposed, again, that the median be raised as a traffic calming and pedestrian safety. The roads are narrow, the lanes are narrowed to allow the bikes and the automobiles to share. It's called a sharrow. It's not a formalized bike lane, but it is a shared pathway. That's one of the things that we heard from the community. Again, the same build-to line. You'll see the balconies, you'll see hardscape treatments, and again, you'll see the shade trees. So we believe that mid-block decorative crossings are going to be important here because that will provide pedestrian refuge and be improve safety here as well. Some of the key recommendations for amenities for the public spaces. Now, they are both downtown, and there's a separate set for the commercial corridor. Now, all the corridors, either shade structures, bus shelters, and they call the aggregate, it's called a silva cell system, so that you can plant trees and still have people walk around it, and the roots are protected. Recycling receptacles, canopy trees, and for the downtown area, one of the things that I want to point out is that when you're ready now for your CIP to start purchasing, your benches are already designed. You already know what to go with, so you don't have to do the design anymore. You just go out and purchase them. And all that information is included in your master plan. One of the interesting things that we saw in another community, and there's a picture in the master plan, but it's not up here. They actually have community logos and designs on the sanitary sewer, the manhole covers. So you can get right down to branding and theming each of your corridors, and it's particularly the downtown area. So now looking at some of the other key recommendations is the design guidelines. This ranges everything from parking, how the parking is designed. Remember I spoke to you earlier about the parking structure, but it's not just that, it's parking circulation and how you're going to move pedestrians around, the landscaping, signage, and architectural treatments. As a matter of fact, for the downtown corridor, the architectural design theme was Mediterranean that was selected by the people who showed up at those workshops. Other things that you have to do is a level of service analysis for each of the corridors. Remember I mentioned about coordinating with DOT? Well, this is an important piece because you have a number of things to deal with DOT. Reducing the speed, raising the medians. Reducing the medians, you have the crosswalks. So there's a number of things that you have to deal with DOT. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, and we'd work with you on the action plan, is how to bring DOT to the table on this. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Yes, ma'am.
Our city just got a grant, a very large grant, a 50-50 match for trees on our street. So we have approved it. And we have purchased these, I don't know if Mr. O'Brien is here, we've approved date palms. Is that a mistake? Is that something we should look at if it's not too late?
Well, it's up to you, but just remember they don't provide the kind of shade for a pedestrian to make a pedestrian area. It can make a statement.
It's very beautiful.
So,
It's like a nice statement.
so you can have, say, date palms in your medians if it's allowed by DOT.
Medians, they're going to be on the sidewalk.
Well, you can still do you can do the trees in the middle, but for
We don't have those right now. Okay, just ask because they're not in, but we're spending a lot of money, want to make sure we don't do something we shouldn't.
and that's something that you all can discuss, but our recommendation is definitely canopy trees simply because of the pedestrian experience. It does not provide as much shade. Again, it provides a beautiful statement, and you can alternate them. Because not everywhere you may want to have the canopy trees. You may want to have those nice statement palms. So it's certainly a decision you all have to make, but on a recommendation basis for encouraging pedestrian activity, canopy trees are the way to go. But you can still use those beautiful statement palms, most certainly. Other thing to talk about is that one of the things that we recommend is to amend your comp plan and the LDRs to allow what they call a build-to line. Right now, you require in many of your corridors your buildings to be set back. So that's just the opposite of what you want. You want them to have to go up closer rather than be set back. So that's a recommendation. Doing a parking study is going to be important, and we think that when you do the action, when we talk about implementing the action plan, one of the first things that needs to be accomplished is a parking study, and then to create a citywide parking master plan of where the parking goes, because if you study the parking, you need to identify hand in hand with where the development is going to go, where the parking should go. You want to, if the demand is here, you don't want to put your parking over here. You want to put your parking where your demand is, and that will come out of the parking study. Land assembly to increase the parcel depths along 125th, we think is a great idea, a good recommendation. Some others is to locate the parking to the rear or the side of the buildings, require native vegetation, low water, low maintenance. And again, going back to that student housing, I can't harp on that enough, to bring the student housing into the downtown and coordinate with the FEC train station. One thing that you want to do, we think you should really do, is a strategic economic development program. And I know your economic development coordinator is here, I believe, tonight. We think that's an important thing to do at a 5 and a year, 10 year. Create a marketing plan, because the marketing plan will brand each of your corridors and will encourage the kind of development and businesses you want to come into your community. Do some parcel acquisition. We had originally recommended the Stembridge, Miami Theater, and the Deal blocks as purchased for land acquisition. And create a catalyst project, maybe the municipal complex, and combining the City Hall, public safety, and retail. How are we going to pay for all this stuff? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What? Oh, you said. Okay. The ULI study that was done recommended this land acquisition, these particular parcels for you to purchase. So we incorporated that into the master plan. Did you want to move on, Madam Mayor? Okay. So again, how do you pay for it? There's a wide-ranging funds available that do not come out of the general fund. Everything from, these are mainly capital infrastructure funding sources, everything from safe routes to schools to the new Freedom Program to perhaps your parking revenues and, of course, the local gas tax. For some general funding sources, now again, we have 4 pages, very small print of different types of funding sources that we'll be working with the finance director as we are moving through this project. These are just a couple of them. Bond financing, everything from revenue, general bonds, to pledging revenues. But there's a new bond that we highly recommend that you look at. It's called Build America Bond. And what that does is it actually helps subsidize your actual cost of borrowing. The Florida Main Street program is excellent. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Sewell's Point. They are a Florida Main Street community, and this particular program helps communities who are particularly in downtowns to revitalize. The Community Transformation Grant is a grant that is used to build healthier communities through walking. So there's a lot of different funding, and of course the Brownfield, and you all have very good knowledge of the Brownfield program.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
How much of the financing should be from developers, partnering, and how much of it should be from the city?
Well, with the idea of the public-private partnerships, that would be your driver to begin with, is through your public-private partnerships. But you do have other sources to pay for those public realm improvements that you not necessarily want to depend upon a developer to do. So you have to combine those, and you have a very good finance director who is very capable of understanding that process, as well as your city attorney. they're the ones who really would help you understand that, how that works together. But out of the action plan, we'll actually create you a finance program that says, here's how to pay for it, here's what we're going to pay for, here's the funds we're going to use for it. So whether it's a private-public partnership, or in this particular case, this project may be we'll utilize this particular funding source, that's what will come out of the action plan. So we'll actually work with the finance department to come up with that plan, that financing plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over, now that everybody's going, oh my gosh, is she ever going to shut up? I'm going to introduce Bob Cambrick to you, and Bob is going to walk you through the next, what do we have to do now to implement this, all this great information I provided you today. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Can you define the boundaries of downtown? Because I know you mentioned 125th and
Yes, ma'am.
West Street.
If I may go back, I know this drives people crazy to see these screens moving so fast, but let me go back to this one particular slide. This particular slide is actually defined in your future land use map, has defined.
Streets and avenues to avenues.
Yes, you're having, it's the NRO. You're looking at everything from Pioneer Boulevard to 123rd East. You have borders of the, 6. Thank you, Tanya. And the south is 123rd on the south. And east?
12th Avenue.
12th Avenue.
12.
12th Avenue. Okay. And then you have all these great little streets and areas within your downtown, because it is defined already in your comp plan and your future land use map. So with that, don't look, because this will drive you crazy. Let me jump to Bob's slides again. This always makes me dizzy to sit there and watch somebody do that. And thank you for allowing me to present this portion.
I'm sorry. Usually I don't use a microphone because my mom actually says I have a very loud voice. I'm just going to stand here. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good evening. My name is Bob Cambrick, and good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Johnson, the city staff, and all you citizens and residents and interested parties who've joined us tonight. It's always good to see citizens actually take time off from their schedule to participate in the public process. As has been said before, I'm the Director of Public Policy with the South Florida Regional Planning Council. The Regional Planning Council covers Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties, and in 71 cities, and that does include the city of North Miami. As Debbie discussed, the Downtown Development and Major Corridor Master Plan was a self-assessment of the factors that have affected growth and economic development in North Miami, and also it contains successful strategies for future growth. The assessment itself represents a significant, that was the word I was looking for, significant commitment that the city has made thus far. And what I'm trying to discuss with you this evening is the action plan process. The action plan itself is going to outline and prioritize the activities that are needed to implement the recommendations that are within that self-assessment. An action plan is needed in order to move forward and operationalize the changes that will allow North Miami to enhance for residents, visitors, and business and property owners economic, cultural, and social opportunities. And a lot of times in community development, what winds up happening is that people will create plans. They'll have a vision in there. They'll have some suggestions, and they become what I call shelf-filling prophecies. They go on a shelf, and nobody ever looks at them again. The reason why that happens is that next step. They don't have in there what firm commitments are going to be made about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and how you pay for it. And this is what your action plan is going to do. It allows the plan to now have legs, to have value, to move forward the visions that you've talked about. And also, like I said, it has that component that's going to have, as Debbie has mentioned before, the financial part of it. That's a lot of times people don't assess, what is it going to cost to do the things we're trying to do, how are we going to pay for that, and who are we bringing to the table as our funders to help that get done. Now, what has happened is that our team has looked at and used professionally accepted methodology to say what's going to be the best route for North Miami to prepare this action plan. And what we've done is we've come up with 6 major tasks, which you see on the screen. And I apologize that I didn't make enough handouts. I have some for the commissioners, and I'll give you my email if you want to get a copy of it. I can send it to you after the meeting. Okay. There we go. Okay. The first major task is going to be a startup meeting, a project startup meeting where the team is going to meet with city staff, and we're going to gather input and identify the major issues that were identified in the self-assessment, establish roles and responsibilities, who's going to do what and when, basically come up with a timeline and schedule and have everyone on the same page about what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to get it done. Discuss the opportunities and constraints that were identified in the plan so to make sure that we're concentrating on those things. Once again, you want your action plan, and it's that verb, action. You want it actually to be doing the things that are going to move everything forward. And we're also going to, in that part of that process, is create what's going to be called the Downtown Action Plan Advisory Committee members. That Downtown Action Plan Advisory, DPAC as we're calling it, is going to be critical to the process. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. In task 2, we're going to meet with the City Council in order to bring everyone up to speed on the roles and responsibilities that have been agreed upon, and also get the City Council's input on those DPAC members, the appointees. And what we're looking at there is basically the reason why you would have that DPAC is that they maintain ongoing advocacy for the project. They marshal the existing resources that you have in the community, and they also maintain a sense of ownership through that plan and through the process. And so those citizens are going to volunteer their time, going to bring to the table, and what we're recommending as potential members of the DPAC will be key community stakeholders with representations from local arts community, cultural community, education, the film industry, civic organizations, and the business communities. And that includes examples like MOCA, which we've mentioned before, Business Development Board, the Chamber of Commerce, the university partners, the other stakeholders that the city may decide they want to include. In task 3, what we're going to wind up doing is helping the city actually get that team together, developing the invitations, getting in touch with everyone, coming up with a meeting schedule that they're going to be able to do, and doing all the coordination activities that help move that process forward and so that it works fluidly. Under task 4 is going to be the primary activity. Citizen input is always vital to any plan for it to have success. And so we are planning 2 facilitated community meetings at which we will provide the information and get, more importantly, what's going on. One of the things I often say when I'm in a community, I live in the city of Hollywood. I know of the city of North Miami. I have 20 years of planning experience. I wouldn't dare try to tell North Miami what is best for them. I think what I can do is give you information that helps you guide the decisions you want to make, but it's the citizens, the business owners who live here that are part of that community meeting process that we're going to get that input and to use that to actually develop the action plan as it goes along. And during the second meeting, what will happen is that we're going to actually present the draft plan. We're looking at a very compressed, aggressive schedule for this. The draft plan is going to be available in 3 months, with the final plan to be completed in 6 months. And as part of that process, there are different things along the way. And what Debbie has talked about and what the mayor just asked about a minute ago, one of the key components, developing your opinions regarding costs. After you go through and you've already done those assessments and saying this is what's important, here are the ways we're going to try to deal with those things, then what's going to be the way that we pay for it? How much does it cost, and how are you going to fund those? There are different opportunities. The managers talked about the bonding opportunities to look at. There are myriad things, and the team has great experience to be able to bring those to the table and be able to show how that is going to work. And not only as part of that, identifying the cost, but also identifying the timelines for bringing those things together. And then all these tasks, they're not separate and distinct. They actually are connected, and we'll be doing them together as we're moving along, and then we'll be using the task 6 is actually the drafting of the plan and then finalizing the action plan. And what will wind up happening there is that like I said, the action plan is going to have implementation, prioritization, timelines for the capital improvements, and like I said, also the cost for getting there and the funding. And once again, 3 months to do the draft, 6 months to have it ready. And basically, what we've done is kind of actually operationalize that to a large degree. During the first week, when you say, let's go, we're going to have the project startup meeting, and then during the 3rd week, we'll meet with the city council. During the 4th week, we're going to be assisting staff to set up that DPAC and move things forward there. in order to be able to host the first community meeting, and we want to have that first community meeting during the fifth week of the process. By the sixth week, we're going to be in the process of identifying what the costs are and looking at potential funding sources, and basically having a full financial plan ready for inclusion by the 8th week. And like I said, yes, sir.
I was going to ask you to come back to that, but I just want you to kind of slow down so the community can understand that sixth part, where
Okay.
we're identifying the money and applying it to the specific projects, because they hear mayor and council say, find capital money, we're doing budgetary things. So can you just go back to that part? So the community, I just want to emphasize on
Right.
that with the community and what that would really entail.
Right. I mean, what you're looking at there is, like I said, you're going to go through the process. Like the master plan itself already has in there recommendations in terms of where some streetscaping and some other things may occur. And then we start getting into, from the input process, how is that going to be done? What is it, and how does it look? And then how much will it cost? And then being able to say, what are the various funding sources that may be out there? Are there federal dollars? Are there state dollars? Are they coming from the Department of Transportation? Are you looking at doing a public-private partnership where the development community or other sources are paying for it? Are there grants that are out there that may not be classic transportation grants? There are grants that come from the state of Florida that are for economic development purposes that can actually fund transportation improvements. And so the plan will not only identify, here's the activity, here's the timeline for getting that activity done, here's how much that activity is going to cost, and here are the ways in which you can fund that activity. Yes, sir.
One of the action thing you're talking about, you talking just about the downtown corridor, or are you talking about the city at large? Sir?
I'm sorry, hang on. Is the downtown is what the action plan is addressing.
What we're talking about. Now, we're not referring to Northwest 7th Avenue, we're not talking about 119th Street at this phase.
Not at this phase, sir. Okay.
When will we be addressing that part of the overall strategic view of 119th, Northwest 7th, West Dixie Highway?
Right.
My name is Kenneth East, by the way. I'm on the planning commission, and I used to be the former city chief here, and I go every street, alley,
Right.
you name it.
So right now, we're just now working out the schedule for this component. We're going to be looking at what's going to be the most orderly way to get to those other areas, and we'll be developing a schedule as soon as possible with that. So I can't answer it yet, but it is under consideration, and the schedule is going to be developed.
We're looking at, we brought up on the planning commission, we would like to go back to the height and density and increase it. There's one way we have to go in the city, we feel is vertical. We also brought up the fact of the parking lot,
Right.
which is a
Right.
necessity, and we want to improve those.
And sir, this is
I don't want you to take away
no, you're what you're not no what you're actually
We're going to have a question and answer
Right.
period.
Okay.
I
Right.
just wanted him to emphasize the capital improvement so the community can hear. So just let him finish the presentation and we can have a
right. And I thank you very much for your questions, because what you also help illustrate for us is the value of those community meetings that we're going to be having. The community meetings is where we're going to get that input, whether it's from planning council members, property owners, and everyone else that will help guide that action plan. So thank you for illustrating how effective and well that can be done. And so where we were, basically, like I said, in the 8th week, is where the draft financial plan is going to be ready for inclusion in the draft report. Like I said, throughout the process, the team's going to be gathering information, analyzing, and trying to figure out what's best for this community and to achieve the economic, recreational, cultural, and social opportunities in North Miami for residents and business owners. And basically, completion of these activities is going to be done in the 11th week, so that the action plan will be shared the very next week. So in the 12th week of this process is when the action plan is going to be available for review by citizens and everyone else, for us to then take it to that, the second community meeting and be able to get additional input, then spend the rest of the process making changes or revisions as needed based on the guidance that you've provided as a community, with the idea that the final document is going to be ready and completed by the 22nd week. And if Madam Mayor, or council members, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to address those for you as well. Well, 20, yeah, basically, we're trying to, yeah. Okay. So we want to, oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
It's not a question.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you include the existing resources, the American Bloom for the parks and the Playful City USA? I don't see any mention of existing priorities for funding that we have.
Well, we have not developed the action plan yet, and so that's one of the things that we're going to be doing is getting information that you're bringing to us to say, here's a resource that's available. How can that be incorporated into achieving the outcomes that the community wants? And so we hope you'll be able to follow the process and give us additional input as we're going through. I'll make a note of what you're saying as available resource, and then we could.
My concern, no offense, but my concern is that when, well, maybe I shouldn't have, but I would have expected that. I would have expected that you would have known that. I mean, if you're trying to develop a master plan of this breadth and depth, you would want to build on what's already here, other than MoCA, which is an obvious landmark.
That would be one of the parts of developing the action plan, is to look at what you're already utilizing for funding and programs. So when we get to that point, that's when that would be incorporated.
No, but you would want to, in budgeting or even thinking about it, maximize the possibilities, even if we're underutilizing those resources, which we may be.
Understand, and that's part of the exploration that we will be doing, is so that we are maximizing what you're using, the existing resources. But that comes as part of the action plan process. It's not that we ignore everything else out there. That's when we gather through the public input as well as staff input to what you're utilizing. We haven't got to that point yet, but we will. We will definitely be doing that. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important point.
Are there other questions? Thank you.
So what makes a downtown great? We work with a lot of different communities, and they understand that it's a patient, long-term process to actually becoming a great downtown. It doesn't happen overnight. But every community has some very common themes, including having a vision like the city does. They have a downtown master plan. They have a development plan. They have implementation strategies and an action plan, which is what we're working on now. They capitalize upon those opportunities and constraints and assets they already have in the community, as well as their existing fiscal resources and the programs that they have in place. There's a linkage between the priorities in the action plan and what happens in your capital improvement plan. That's where that whole financing strategy comes into place. And they bring mixed use into it. Bringing retail into the residential downtown is what makes a downtown successful. They have ambassadors, as Bob was talking to you about with the committee. They have ambassadors who promote that plan and promote it for the long term, not just as the changing times or the changing with the council. It's a long-term process that people keep moving forward. There's a political will. You have that. They're sitting right here. You have the political will, and we have community support. You have the planning commissioner there already talking about what they want. They're excited about wanting to do something on 7th Avenue, although that's not in your downtown. That enthusiasm is elsewhere. They built in flexibility because conditions change, things change, and you want to be able to deal with those things that are expected as well as unexpected. They also take a look at it regularly. It's not a static plan. And because things change, and so you want to have some flexibility. And they do acknowledge that there are the realities of the economic conditions of the region, because we all went through this great recession that we're supposedly coming out of. So things change. So a lot of things move and stop and start again. So let's take a look at some successful downtown redevelopment. This is the fun part of my presentation tonight, because this is from Delray Beach. These are some photographs of downtown Delray Beach. Everything from the higher density that you can see on the left to the cafes and the wide sidewalks, and you can see the on-street parking that I mentioned to you earlier that we proposed for 125th. Again, Delray Beach, you can see that they have parking, they call them bike garages. They have fabulous signage. They branded their downtown. They branded in this case, they have signage on one side, and you can see the banners on the other. Again, you can see the wide sidewalks. You see also the wonderful street trees. And I understand that the council is going to go down there and tour them, and they have taken that fabulous step of visiting Fort Myers. This is unprecedented. I am so impressed, and I do this all over, that this council has taken that step to go and actually see other communities and how they have successfully done this. Again, downtown Delray. And I have to tell you a really quick story, and I shared this with the mayor at our meeting. My former boss was engaged with Delray at the very beginning, and he was instrumental in the development of the plan. And over the years, I watched him have all these pictures of before and after Delray on his walls in his office. And he now takes every Friday night, he and his wife get to go to downtown Delray, and that's their thing, to go and actually enjoy the fruits of a long-term project that he has seen from the beginning to the end. He's now retired, but it's a fabulous thing. And again, it's a long-term process, but he actually gets to enjoy it. So I just wanted to share that really quick story with you. Again, you'll see the streetscaping and how they've handled the wide sidewalks in Delray. They have a gateway feature here in Delray. I mentioned to you earlier a gateway feature. This is an entry into their downtown. Las Olas also has that across the gateway feature in Las Olas. It's a way to brand and make yourself a little different. You can see the Buddhist Sky Bar. They have the seating out front. They have residential over top of that bar. Again, bringing mixed use into the downtown. There's a good example here of residential over the retail. And you can see again this fabulous street lighting. I wanted to point that out to you, that it is a pedestrian scaled, human scaled street lighting. And it's also branded. They have their specific brand, and it kind of goes, that whole theme goes along with their community. There's a hotel here, Hyatt Place, fabulous place. And there's a way of putting a hotel in the downtown. And you see how that looks? That just blends in. It's not ugly. It blends right into the downtown really well. And again, on the right, you'll see the vertical density of the development in downtown Delray. Art. As something I mentioned to you all earlier, this is really important for the downtown, is the art. Bringing art into the public realm. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll have the artist, and you have artists here to bring your art into your downtown. The creativity from your cultural elements that you have in this community is just fabulous. Now, looking at Fort Myers, these are photos that Tanya took a couple of these photos, as well as the council took photos when they were there in Fort Myers. Again, this is another downtown. I don't know if any of you knew what Fort Myers looked like before. Didn't look like this. Some of us know what Fort Myers looked like. They've done a fabulous job with their downtown. And as the council has witnessed, they actually talked to the people that were responsible for bringing this into fruition. You'll see that, again, that they have the 10-foot, they have the build-to line, they have the hardscape treatment between the right-of-way and the buildings. They have awnings, and they have colonnades, and they have arcades. You can see the arcade on the left-hand side of that particular picture. You can see the roadway treatment. The streetscaping is fabulous there. This is an example that shows you how their benches are look. And Madam Mayor, this is an example of how they use the palms, right? But they also had the shade trees. So there's a way of using those palms as an accent piece to your canopy trees.
Now, Councilwoman Keys wanted these benches, but now she saw the butterfly one. She changes her mind.
It's fabulous because it's art. It's a piece of art. Now, Naples, many of you remember old Naples, what it looked like. It was all one-story buildings. Well, they went up vertical to increase their density, and I believe the planning commissioner mentioned going vertical. This is an excellent example. And you see the art that they have there, alligators. So again, bringing art into the public realm. Hollywood Arts Park. Bob lives in Hollywood, and I'm going to ask him to kind of join me up here at the podium. But this is the Hollywood Arts Park is an excellent example of what recreation can bring to the downtown. Not only do you see they have that fabulous fountain and they have the arts park, but Bob, tell us a little bit about what they do there at the arts park as far as recreation.
Right. The arts park is right next to downtown, and what winds up happening is almost every evening there is something going on in the arts park. What they've been able to do is they've done a good match on Monday evenings. Monday evenings is my night for gluttony because it's the food trucks are there. They circle they circle the park. They're there from 5 until 10. Throughout the week, there are different events. There's family recreation during all hours until sundown. A little bit later on, so you have the ability to walk in the park. You saw the water, but there's also an area of a park for kids. Wednesday nights they wind up doing Zuma. Every Friday night is dedicated and is put on by Parks and Recs and is an evening for young children. And so the Parks and Recs have games that are going on, Simon Says, all these other types of things. They also will have movies for the children that are going on at the amphitheater. And then on Saturday night, the CRA has a different band every Saturday night, and the genre ranges from blues, depending on what, basically they try to make sure they're reaching out to all segments of society. And then also there are special events that wind up happening during the year. I believe, like for instance, the Martin Luther King celebration will be at the Arts Park also. And so it's contiguous to downtown. People eat, recreate, and then walk and use that area as well.
So we encourage that. And that's the end of our presentation tonight, and we do thank you.
Question?
During the planning, no, I have a mic. Thank you. During the planning, I understand 125th is a state road. So where do FDOT come into play?
Remember I told you how important the coordination was going to be with DOT. Again, all those roads are actually DOT owned. There are design variances that we have been successful in dealing with DOT to obtain design variances for both the speed as far as median width, bringing the roadway width down to accommodate sharrows. There's a number of things that will occur. That's part of what the action plan does. And one of the recommendations that we have for the DAPAC is to, and we've taken the liberty to make sure and identify the appropriate planning person, not the DOT engineer, but the appropriate planning staff, because DOT is promoting the Livable Streets program. That requires these type of things to occur. District 4 has been very successful. District 6 has been a little slow in getting there. But through the political will that you have sitting right here in front of you, that's the driver.
For 125th specifically, because that we actually a street that goes all the way to Belle Harbor, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a hurricane evacuation road. So I'm assuming that we need to contact FDOT as early as possible to make sure if there is a alternate road or if there's the only road that they can use in case if there's an emergency from Belle Harbor to where.
That is correct. That is correct. And that's the importance of having them on the DAPAC, because they are willing to serve in a capacity that will help champion your plan, and they want this to occur for you.
So having said that, I'm recommend that before we go any further, that we sit down with FDOT to make sure that they're on board early on, that at least we can actually clarify everything.
Correct.
That's going on.
And I understand that you have. We've also given you, in the master plan, we've actually given you the contact information and the appropriate person that would be handling that as well.
So if you already have talking to them, what is the result? If they
Madam
are on
Mayor?
board and...
She asked you what was the result.
They'll be coming to do a presentation soon, but we've been talking to them for the past 3 months now in terms of about 3 months regarding the roads, and I would let them tell the news to the council instead of me saying it.
Very nice.
And I can also just want to add, I know that the evacuation route is a concern. We've looked at, in our proposal to FDOT is to route traffic north on US 1 to 135th Street and going west. And then because that is a highway that does not have any medians, it would probably serve best because you can actually make lanes that are traditionally eastbound, make them westbound to expedite and get traffic out a little sooner. So we are, and one of our quests to FDOT is to convey 125th Street to the city, if they would do that. And we haven't quite presented that because we're trying to get their support in doing that, which is why, again, we want them on this day pack to get on board with that.
Thank you. I'm Max Thurman. I'm the chairman of the Business Development Board. And first, I wanted to thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of information. We have a lot of good things to look forward to. We've had a lot of meetings, all of us here, with FDOT, and there have been a lot of issues that we've been discussing on where we're going. But also, we have a tremendous resource in the city, a local design firm, Savino Miller, who they designed and created the first phase of the landscaping and the paving, everything we see on 125th Street. So they also have, they're sitting in the audience, by the way, and they have a lot of experience in dealing with the streets and the city, and there's a lot of information there that they can help with in resolving the negotiations. So, thank you.
He has a question back there in the back. He has a question.
The idea of having everybody here, the idea of inviting all of you is to have your input, and certainly those in this type of activities very welcome to be part of our board. We're going to create that board of people who are going to guide us, do recommendation to council and mayors in order for us to move forward with this plan. So I'm really excited about this entire project and looking forward to work with all of you.
I forgot one very important thing. The thing that Bob showed, the Arts Park in Hollywood, a great example of how we could take advantage of a park area that's not quite in downtown, but very close to it, and help springboard into the rest of the city. So that was perfect. Thank you.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. My name is Barry Miller with Savino Miller Design Studio. Max, thank you. And thank you for the great presentation, very comprehensive. Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to follow up by saying how important the FDOT issue is. Because if you go to your Google Earth, take a look at Atlantic Avenue and the Fort Myers streets, all these streets, think about South Miami, too, right there between US 1 and Red Road. All of them have found a way to work with DOT and narrow the street. We have a 4-lane street now with a turn lane. And even with verticality coming up, we still have a very difficult road to hoe in terms of creating a livable street. So what we had done much earlier with the city some time ago was to look at ways that we can reduce the street width exactly like they did on Sunset Drive in South Miami. That enables you to widen the sidewalks, put street trees on that you can work with FDOT with. So you need to work with these folks first in order to be able to design in this capacity that we all want to see to create a great street. Okay, so.
And I do want to acknowledge that we mentioned your firm in the master plan, acknowledging the work that you had already done as far as the streetscaping and recommending that they carry your design all the way through all the corridors to make it a very cohesive look.
I just want to add one thing also for during the process, when did it become the Mediterranean style? That's
Actually, in the stakeholder review, when we did the downtown corridor, we had a stakeholder survey of different architectural styles and treatments, and that was the one that was selected for that corridor.
Come on in. Come on up.
Sure.
Real quick.
Just a little minor comment, but and I don't know if it could be revised, but I just want to know that most of the largest buildings in the downtown, like the City Hall, MoCA, the police department, across the street from City Hall, those larger buildings are not Mediterranean. There are the smaller buildings who are Mediterranean. So I think the character should go back to what should be like the city is calling for, which is a little more contemporary, and if it could be revised.
Certainly can be.
Remember, the city has from 125th to 122nd on Northeast 8th Avenue, these entire, because the plan of the redevelopment as well is for a new city hall, something that is more updated, that is more people friendly and nice to look at. What we have now, it's a gray box. And I don't think our citizens deserve to have a gray box as a city hall. So that's also is part of this development to get this entire road, like we were looking at the parks, with the water parks and, do something like that around here.
Something
and move forward.
active.
That is correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. It's a wonderful plan.
How long is this going to take? What are we looking at in terms of years?
Well, that is,
It's a step-by-step
Yes.
process. It's not going to be a process that we're going to wait till we have all the money to do them all at once. It will start as early as 3 to 6 months from now. That's why we're going to do it as a partnership with private sector and the money from our CRA and the grants that we are applying for.
Now, may I ask another question? Are we looking at knocking some of these buildings down and going up higher vertically?
Which building are you talking about? This building is gone.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I mean, 120, I mean, we're going to go, Madam Mayor, I like your vision. And we're going to go vertically, we're going to go high.
High, definitely.
Okay.
That's the only way we can go anyway.
The reason I say this, and I don't mean to be facetious, when I was in the police department back in the 80s, this blight didn't happen. This blight didn't just happen. This goes back to the 80s. I can remember those apartments on 6th Avenue being an absolute disgrace. And when I was a lieutenant, taking the mayor out there and showing him some of these slumlords. And all of a sudden, one day you wake up in the city that you live in, you work in, you say, what happened? Well, what happened? It started back in the 80s, and we had this vision. Oh, don't build anything higher than 4 stories. We're going to keep it a bedroom community. Well, we did. We had the homeless sleeping on under I-95. And I'm glad to see us taking a new look at what we have here. When I say 7th Avenue, I used to daydream when I was a lieutenant on the midnight shift, like you, Mayor. And I used to say, 119th Street to 143rd Street, why aren't we developing that like Brickell Avenue? Why don't we give our people decent jobs out here? What are we playing around with this little 1-story old garbage that we have there? 119th, from 7th to 17th Avenue, where you have a half a block of business, and then behind it is all residential. My idea, my daydreaming, when I read Bob Moses' book about New York City, was why don't we get the Expressway Authority, get them in there, go through with that linkage between Gratney and I-95, but then use their money from 119th to 121st, condemnation, and make it into a transportation hub. We did that up in Illinois. It was beautiful. And I'm glad to see that you're taking the bull by the horns and doing this. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know what? When I went to Delray 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got so excited as I was walking downtown, as simple as a cupcake store or candy store. I mean, it was all there, and all of these places were packed. And you see people having dinner on the sidewalks, and their dogs sitting at their feet. So it is, open to the entire family. Everybody has a place right there downtown. And I think this is with that type of vision that is driving me, and I'm so excited about the whole thing, and I think we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Did anyone else have any input they want to provide at this time? Yes, sir.
Could I possibly use the podium?
You certainly may.
If I may. So used to being up here. Well, yeah, it's just a little easier from this perspective. First, I want to thank Mayor Tondreau for hosting this event and our city manager for also sponsoring this. And what a great presentation it was. Very much appreciated, very much needed for our city. And there were a few points, not necessarily all connected, but they do pertain to the presentation. I'll throw out a few of them. One is the concern about plantings and trees. For the last 8 years or so, I have, at every occasion, emphasized, you would think that I was selling from the back of a truck right now, but emphasizing the importance of the plantings, particularly the canopy plantings, that really you cannot go wrong with just every place you possibly can to put canopy trees. They provide shade, they're cooler, they reduce sound, they cleanse the air a little bit, and it's probably the best investment possible that anyone can make in terms of you buy a tree like this for maybe it's $100 or maybe it's an ornamental tree for $1,000, and in a few years you have something that could be worth $10,000 and all the benefits that it does provide you. So that's sort of a no-brainer, and I really would like to support that. The difference between, in my opinion, between canopy trees, which can be all over and going onto sidewalks and parks and elsewhere, backyards, front yards, the difference between the canopy trees and the palm trees is really a matter of geometry to some degree. If you're trying to emphasize just general space and coverage, then use the canopy trees. If you're really trying to emphasize something, a particular geometry, a particular focus or alleyway, or LA, not alleyway, but an LA, such as in Mocha's Plaza, where you want to reinforce the geometry of the plaza, then you would use the palm trees. You might use them in sidewalks where you don't have room for canopy trees, but if you want to make sort of an architectural statement, you might use the palm trees, the vertical sticks. They really don't provide a lot of shade, though, and are really not so useful compared to the canopy trees. Another point that was mentioned was the parking situation. We have probably, like many cities, we have a zoning code that inevitably shoots ourselves in the foot every time we try to apply it. And that is that if we have a height restriction, and yes, we do have some setbacks, but if we have a height restriction and a particular developer has a parcel, let's say it's 100 foot by 200 foot, and they're allowed to go 10 stories, and this was actually an example for us some years back during the comprehensive plan. There was an example, and it shows you, well, here's the building going up X amount of stories, and the rest of the land is used for parking. Do we really want that? Where because we've hit this limit at the top, because the developer is going to want to get their maximum bang for the buck vertically, fill that out, and they just then keep sprinkling and paving over the entire area, it's really to our detriment. It really should be rewritten. We really need to say, if you're going to go through the effort of paying for structured parking, of being able to put it underneath your building and to allow for green space and open space all around the building so we don't have to look at the sea of cars again and again and paving, let's exempt it from the zoning. If it's whatever it is, 50 feet, then if you want to put a level or two of parking there, then you just raise that up and you exempt that layer or two of parking so that you don't spread out all over the place. We keep on doing it again and again. It's very detrimental. The example of that would be over at Biscayne Landing, the area that was formerly called the Oaks, that we have a giant parking garage sitting out there. Why is that? That's not because anybody really wanted it that way or because it works the best. That's really a function of they were limited to 25 floors. They want to get every bit of apartments and fill it in with their particular usage in that space, and therefore they put it to the side. It's sort of a gun to their head in a way, because they weren't allowed to go further up and be able to tuck this underneath. If they had been able to tuck it underneath, maybe they could have surrounded it with townhouses or something else or some other vegetation. Would have been easier for the people in the apartments, as well as it would have been aesthetically more pleasing, would have provided more green space. And this is because we didn't say, oh, you can take those 4 or 5 levels and up the entire building. We said, no, you're limited here, so therefore park this giant monstrosity out in the front yard, of which some of the apartments then look at. So if we could change that as soon as possible, it would be to everybody's benefit, I think, whether it's residential or commercial structures, to exempt structured parking. Another thought was, just to articulate what the presentation was tonight, this is a planning emphasis. It's a planning presentation, and it is different, as most of you know, from, say, architecture and engineering and from other legal matters. But it is really an exercise where, and that's the nature of your scope, is to basically decorate what we have. Right? It's trying to make the best of what we have. So please keep in mind that this does not relocate buildings, it does not widen highways, it does not create parks, it does not do a multitude of things to really get the end vision that we want. It's doing the best you can with what we have. And the reason I bring this up is because I know the emphasis tonight is on the downtown area. No mistake about that. But I'd like to point out that some people don't realize this opportunity does exist. We're going to all these local cities to compare and to provide information for downtown North Miami. But if you had the chance to actually pick up and move buildings and shape the streets and create the parks, you would do it, right? You go, I can make improvements here, I can make improvements here. This could be a much better community, better environment. The reason I bring it up is because we have that opportunity. It's not part of the downtown, but at Biscayne Landing, we have the opportunity to create great things. And the reason I brought up the other trades is we don't have an urban design plan, which is different from planning. Urban design plan, which defines the streets, defines parks, the outer shells of buildings and retail and how it's all put together, which would take the lead from planning and become a little bit more of a concrete vision. And we could do that. And it would be better than any of the cities that you're going to and anything we have around here, and we could have it within our grasp. And if you want something that's like a planned circle, like in Hollywood, or something grand or whatever it is, we could have that. We have that opportunity with 184 acres if we push for it, and it'll benefit both the citizens of North Miami as well as our community. So, yeah.
And one of the things that I do want to make a comment is that one of the items in the action plan that we already would recommend is the development of the conceptual plan that identifies those type of things and does that level of design at the downtown level. And then when it goes to the next area, but of course, I understand what you're saying is that there is a time limit on those in that other project. So that's something that you may want to talk to staff about.
Right. And just finally, that if we did want to explore more of an urban design type relationship and what other possibilities are in a broader, more fanciful way, we really can invite some local schools and such to submit designs and get the information over the internet, and we could have some really great ideas just to instill some conversation to support this. It doesn't conflict with the planning and this particular plan. It would just supplement it. It might get more interest. It might get more people out to events like this. Anyway, thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you. Those are great ideas. And that's the kind of thing that we expect to see you at the community planning meetings, bringing those ideas forward. Because if I don't see you there, I'm going to go out and find you and drag you in there. Anyone else have any other questions or comments? Madam Mayor, do you want to? You're good? Well, thank you so much, and I'll let the mayor close us out for tonight.
I would like to thank all of you for being here, and once again, it is a very exciting and ambitious project. It is not my vision, my project, it's ours. And, well, we can do it. Let's do it together.
Is that it's in the